In today's world, technology gives us the illusion of safety. A phone in your pocket, a voice assistant that listens, a 3D jet number that promises help no matter where you are. We believe that if something goes wrong, all we have to do is call, that someone will answer, that help will come. But sometimes, the call connects, the words are spoken, and help still doesn't arrive. This is the story of Kyle Plush, a 16-year-old student, a tennis player, a son, a teenager who did everything right and still died waiting. Kyle Plush was 16 years old, a sophomore at Seven Hills School in Cincinnati, Ohio. He was known as polite, intelligent, and reliable. Teachers described him as focused. Friends described him as kind and easygoing. To his parents, he was their son, a kid with plans, routines, and a future that felt stable and predictable. On April 10th, 2018, Kyle followed that routine. It was an ordinary school day. Classes had ended. There was a tennis match scheduled for later that afternoon. Kyle was on the team, and he was expected on the court shortly before 3 p.m. Kyle drove himself to school in the family's gold 2004 Honda Odyssey minivan. He pulled into the student parking lot, parked the vehicle, turned off the engine, and got out. Nothing about the moment felt unusual. The weather was normal. Students were still around. Cars sat quietly in rows. Kyle realized something small, something almost forgettable. His tennis gear was still in the back of the van. So he walked around to the rear of the vehicle and opened it. The Honda Odyssey Kyle drove had a folding rear seat design. It was meant to be convenient. It allowed the back seats to fold down so the cargo area could be expanded. Kyle climbed inside the vehicle to reach his equipment. He leaned forward, stretching past the folded seat, and then, without warning, the rear seat snapped backward. It happened instantly. The seat collapsed with force, throwing Kyle off balance. His body flipped upside down into the cargo area. The seat slammed down on top of him, pinning him in place. Kyle was now trapped, upside down, wedged between the seat and the floor. His chest compressed under approximately 70 pounds of pressure. He couldn't move. He couldn't reposition his body. He couldn't free his arms. And worst of all, he couldn't breathe properly. What Kyle was experiencing is known as positional asphyxia. It doesn't happen all at once. It doesn't look dramatic from the outside. But inside the body, it is deadly. When a person's chest or abdomen is compressed in a position that restricts breathing, oxygen intake becomes shallow. The lungs can't fully expand. Carbon dioxide builds up, muscles weaken, speech becomes difficult. The person remains conscious, aware, as their body slowly loses the ability to sustain itself. Kyle was alone in the van. No one could see him. No one could hear him. But Kyle didn't panic blindly, despite being upside down, in pain, and struggling for air. He stayed mentally focused. He knew he needed help. Kyle couldn't use his hands. They were pinned, but he had his phone, using only his voice. Kyle activated Siri. He told it to call 911 at approximately 3:16 p.m. The first call connected. On the other end of the line, a dispatcher answered. Kyle tried to speak. His voice was weak, muffled, broken by gasps for air. He said hello repeatedly, asked for help, struggled to explain where he was. The dispatcher asked for his location. Kyle tried to respond, but the position he was trapped in made his speech unclear. You can hear thuds on the call, Kyle trying to move. trying to push, trying to survive. Eventually, through the strain, Kyle managed to say words that cut straight through the confusion. "I'm at 7 Hills. I'm going to die here." Those words were enough to trigger a response. Officers were dispatched. Police were sent to 7 Hills School, but the call had problems. Kyle couldn't clearly explain what had happened. He couldn't describe the vehicle yet. He couldn't say he was trapped upside down in a minivan. The dispatcher didn't know he was inside a car, didn't know he was pinned, didn't know how urgent the situation truly was. The call began to fade. Kyle's voice weakened. His breathing became harder, and then the line went quiet. At approximately 3:26 p.m., 2 Cincinnati police officers arrived at the school. They began searching the parking lot. They walked through rows of cars, looked around for anyone injured, listened, but Kyle was invisible. From the outside, the minivan looked normal, parked, closed, silent. Kyle couldn't bang loudly, couldn't shout clearly, couldn't attract attention. The officers searched for about 11 minutes. They found no one in distress, no one screaming, no one injured, no obvious emergency. They remained unaware that a teenager was suffocating inside a vehicle just feet away. While officers searched, Kyle was still alive, still upside down, still pinned, still fighting, and despite how weak he was becoming, Kyle made another decision. He called 911 again, at approximately 3:35 p.m. The second call connected. This time, Kyle's voice was clearer. Not because he was stronger, but because he knew time was running out. He provided critical information. He said he was trapped inside a vehicle. He identified it clearly, a gold 2004 Honda Odyssey. He said he was in the 7 Hills School parking lot. Then he said something that should never come from the mouth of a child. "I probably don't have much time left, so tell my mom I love her if I die." Kyle emphasized that this was not a prank. This is not a joke. He begged for help. "Send officers immediately. I'm almost dead." The information Kyle gave during that second call should have saved his life. Officers were already there. All that was needed was communication. But that communication never happened. The dispatcher did not successfully relay the vehicle description to the officers on scene. The officers never knew to look for a gold Honda Odyssey, never knew to check inside vehicles, never knew Kyle was pinned and running out of air. At 3:37 p.m., the incident was closed. Police reported finding no one in distress. They left. Kyle was still alive. After the officers left, Kyle Plush was completely alone. No one was coming. His phone remained beside him, but his body was failing as oxygen deprivation worsened. Muscle strength faded. Speech became impossible. Consciousness slipped. Minutes stretched into hours. Students left campus. The parking lot emptied. Evening approached. Kyle's minivan sat silently among others inside. Time ran out as night fell. Kyle's parents began to worry. Kyle hadn't come home. He wasn't answering his phone. His father, Ronald Plush, began searching. He drove to places Kyle might be. Eventually, he went to a parking lot near the school in Madisonville. There, he saw the minivan when he opened it. He found his son. Kyle was still upside down, still pinned, but no longer alive. It was approximately 9 p.m., nearly 6 hours after Kyle first called for help. Kyle Plush died from positional asphyxia, An autopsy confirmed it. The cause wasn't mysterious. It wasn't sudden. It was slow, preventable, and devastating. When recordings of the 911 calls were released, the public heard Kyle's voice, heard his fear, his clarity, his final words. An outrage followed. Investigations revealed the truth. Kyle did everything right. He called for help. He identified his location. He described his vehicle. He remained calm under impossible conditions. The system failed him. Information was no past. Protocols were not followed thoroughly. Assumptions replaced verification. One missed detail became a death sentence. In 2021, the city of Cincinnati agreed to a $6 million settlement with Kyle's family. It was the second largest settlement in city history, but no amount of money could change the reality. Kyle was gone. His future ended in a parked car. Kyle's death led to nationwide changes. Dispatcher training was updated. Procedures were rewritten. Emergency response systems emphasized verification, communication, and persistence. Kyle's story became a case study, a warning, a reminder that silence does not mean safety. Kyle Plush was not reckless. He was not careless. He was a teenager doing something ordinary. His death was not inevitable. That is what makes it unbearable. Help was nearby. Technology worked. The call connected, but the chain broke, and Kyle paid the price. Some 911 calls end with sirens and rescue. Others end with silence, but some never truly end at all. They echo in training rooms, in dispatch centers, in the minds of those who heard the voice. Kyle Plush's call is one of them, a reminder that every call matters, every word matters, and every delay can cost a life.